this so it's... For starters, does everybody who wants one have a handout? Stick a hand up if you need one but don't have one. The extras are right here. Yep. Would you like a Bible also?
Yeah.
Perfect. Anybody else handouts? Dave. And Roy, and can you put one over to Lynn too? And your Bible. One or two? One. Oh, I got plenty. Very good. All right. Thank you. Okay, so this was going to be the week where I was just going to read off the outline. Notice that I said it was going to be the week because last session did not stream. So I want to do a little bit of a refresh. This looks like it's working properly now. I think I know what I did wrong. I just pressed the wrong button last time. So I want to start out with a little review just because I personally found this a helpful thing to realize as we're going through, and a couple people mentioned that it was helpful as well. So we're basically reliving our memory here from prior to Christmas, which is just this. Anybody who's willing, share with me just one word description of what does it feel like studying the book of Revelation so far? What are some of your feelings, some of the emotions or the experiential aspect? What's it feel like studying Revelation? Who's willing to share just a one word? Lois? A little scary. Yep, scary is a valid word there. What else? Anybody else willing to share? And if it's the same thing you said last time, that's perfectly fine, Dave.
Perplexing.
Perplexing. It's a good word. Al. Interesting. All right, good. Yep. Mysterious. Sad. There are definitely some very saddening parts. Any other? Overwhelming. Yep. That one came up last time too. Confusing came up last time also. I also remember a few people saying, like inspiring, awe-inspiring, that sort of thing. So let's put all those together. So it's confusing, it's perplexing, it can be a little bit sad, it certainly can be overwhelming. There are moments of great awe, and it can be very inspiring in that regard. And then I just asked the question, well, how should you feel when you read about the end of the world? Yeah, should it not be a little bit intimidating, a little bit scary, maybe a bit confusing, but certainly awe-inspiring? There's some sadness as well. I'm coming more and more to believe, and this is a repeat of last time, and I apologize to those of you who were here, that Revelation is best understood as poetry. And that doesn't make it false. We shouldn't think that poetry is just something that's made up. And I shared a quote that I had just heard that week from Chesterton that I really like. G.K. Chesterton's one of my favorite Christian authors. And he had said that when we're presented with a math problem, we don't write a sonnet to solve it. So why is it so frequently when we're presented with something poetic that we try to solve it mathematically? And I do think that that kind of explains why so many of the approaches to Revelation at least leave me kind of cold. Because I don't really feel like it's the point. I think it's like taking poetry and trying to turn it into a math proof. And that's just not respecting it for what it is. This is a heavenly vision. We should not probably be able to fully understand it while here on earth. Now that said, that's the only introduction I wanted to do, because as I said in the service, we're going to be looking at Revelation 12 today, and I genuinely believe this is the strangest way to tell the Christmas story. This is the Christmas story from the cosmic perspective. And so what I want to do, rather than jumping right into the handout first, although I'm not avoiding the handout, I want to read all of Revelation chapter 12. I'm happy to do that collectively. I'm happy to do it myself into the microphone, so it doesn't really matter to me. Is there anybody who would like to read? We are going to study it section by section, but anybody want to read maybe the first 6 verses, the ones headed here, the woman and the dragon? If you're in the Burgundy Pew Bible, it's page 1034. I don't know if anybody has the smaller black Bibles. If so, feel free to call out the page number. Page 1034 in the Burgundy Bible. Alex, I saw that hand. Would you like to read Revelation chapter 12, verses 1 through 6 for us?
Yeah.
All right, excellent. Go ahead.
And a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and with her head, and on her head, a crown of 12 stars. She was pregnant and was crying out in birth pains and agony of giving birth. And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his head 7
Diadems.
His tail swept down a third of the stars of heaven and cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth, so that when she bore her child, she might devour it. She gave birth to a male child who was to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. But her child was caught up to God and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness where she had a place prepared by God, in which she is to be nourished for 1,260 days.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Al. Anybody? Elijah, want to go next? Why don't we do 7 through 12, and then Christy, I saw that hand. You'll pick up at 13.
And there was a war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not. Neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent, called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, Now is come salvation, and strength, and the kingdom of our God, and the power of his Christ. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God day and night. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb, and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto the death. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea. For the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time.
King James.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, Christy, verse 13.
And when the dragon saw that he had been thrown down to the earth, he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. But the woman was given the 2 wings of the great eagle, so that she might fly from the serpent into the wilderness, to the place where she is to be nourished for a time and times and half a time. The serpent poured water like a river out of his mouth over the woman, after the woman, to sweep her away with the flood. But the earth came to the help of the woman, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed the river that the dragon had poured from his mouth. Then the dragon became furious with the woman, and went off to make war on the rest of her offspring, on those who keep the commandments of God and hold to the testimony of Jesus. And he stood on the sand of the sea.
Okay, very good. So a lot of imagery here in Revelation chapter 12. So again, we're going to jump into the handout in just a moment, but what's your impression? What feelings or responses does this language and imagery evoke? What's that?
The birth of Jesus.
Okay, well, yeah, certainly.
And Mary being pursued by Satan all his life, which is basically what this is.
The birth of Jesus, the pursuit of Satan. I mean, it's pretty hard to read this and not come away with that idea. Christy?
I feel like this versus a lot of the other imagery in Revelation is much more, like you can envision this happening. It's much more something that we can see and visualize, imagine a movie of it or that sort of thing. It's not as a real English, it's more.
The flying beasts with eyes all over them, a little hard for me to picture. This is not hard for me to picture. I'm not a great artist, but I feel like, you know, a good artist could draw this in such a way that I'd be like, yeah, that's what this sounded like. As opposed to some of the other imagery was like, I don't know how to picture this. I don't know quite what this means. All right, so a little easier to access, maybe, as imagery. Other thoughts, just overall. Yeah, Alex, and then Dave, and then...
I was thinking I know the dragon's Satan, but
Right.
now today's the martyr of the innocents.
Right?
I was thinking that it's Herod,
Okay.
and how he wanted to kill Jesus immediately after he was born.
Uh-huh.
That's what I
So...
was thinking when I first read that.
Yeah, so while it says that the dragon here is Satan, it's hard on the day of the slaughter of the innocents to not be thinking of Herod,
Yeah.
waiting to kill Jesus as soon as he shows up and killing the others. Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think it's wrong to go that direction and start to see the way that some of these types have been fulfilled, the way that humans or human events have filled some of these prophecies or symbols. Dave?
I picked up on the parting of the Red Sea,
Mm.
and that the devil going after all of Moses and children of God.
With the sea being spewed out, but then being rescued. So maybe some parallels there for the parting of the Red Sea and the people of Israel being saved. Yeah, absolutely. Lynn and Lisa?
So this subject here about war in heaven.
Yep.
Like, that always amazes me, like, what does that look like when angels fight? I mean, how do they don't hurt each other? Is that
Yeah.
come down on us? And all this time, Satan and his angels have still had access to heaven until they, so it's like, well, was heaven not peaceful if him and his bad angels had been there all that time until they finally quit finding it? Because only then, the people that are in heaven can rejoice because he's gone. from
Right.
heaven. So it's like, my whole thing about what heaven is in gets kind of messed up.
And it does. So a lot there. And let me try to encapsulate it, especially for the online watchers and anybody who couldn't hear. So war in heaven, what should we be picturing? What does it look like when angels fight each other? Can they harm each other? And then the fact that it's up until this point that Satan and his angels have been up in heaven, and now Michael and the good angels fight against Satan and the demons and cast them out so that heaven can rejoice. But interesting that Satan and the demons had access. Does that mean heaven wasn't peaceful up until this point? And to what degree does this require us to rewrite our image of what is heaven? And I do think with that last one, though it's a couple sessions in the future, recognizing that what we're promised is not eternity in heaven. This is language that people often slip into that is theologically not quite correct. We're going to see the promise is a new heavens and a new earth, new heaven and new earth. And so it does require us to rewrite our image of heaven a little bit, and the clouds and the harps and the togas as well, because that's just not what gets pictured for us as far as our eternal promise. So yeah, rewriting a little bit. Now it's a heavenly vision. It's not a textbook on heaven. And so, but all right, a lot of things to sort of factor in there. Lisa.
I'm pretty sure there's some artwork, like in church history, that has Mary depicted with these, like the adorning that we see here.
Yep, with the crowns
Yeah,
and
with the crown of
everything.
moon and the-
Yep, some of the iconography has picked up some of this language for Mary. Now the author, if you read ahead, the author talks about this woman not being so much Mary as being sort of the embodiment of Israel up to that point, but Jesus was born from a body and it was Mary's body, so I don't think it's an either or. Were there other hands? Yep, Charlotte and then Carol.
I'm just looking at 6.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. And the woman fled into the wilderness where she has a place prepared by God. And I'll stop there.
Okay.
Because I don't know the rest of it.
Yeah.
But going to Egypt.
Yep. The fleeing into Egypt, yep, which is
But I don't know about the 1,260 days. So.
what? How long? Anybody know? This number came up a couple of sessions ago. How long is 1,260 days? It's 3.5 years, which later they're going to say a time, times, and half a time, which is the way it gets expressed all the way back in the book of Daniel, which what's 1 time plus 2 times plus another half a time, 3.5 times. It's understood as years. We saw the testimony of the 2 witnesses last session as lasting for 3.5 years, and then 3.5 days that they're dead. And what is 3.5 half of? 7. And what does 7 typically symbolize biblically? Completion, because God completed all of creation. Now, how far we can read into that? It's half of fullness, which means at the very least, it's a limited period of time. There's no way to read 3.5 and think, oh, they mean all of time. That's impossible. That one's ruled out. It's a portion. So there's a portion of time where this will be the reality. Yep, the flight into Egypt certainly comes into mind, which always calls into mind Israel's sojourn in Egypt before. It could be exile. Israel had to wander through the wilderness. Yeah, we got a lot of images being stacked up, and I think that's intentional. Yeah, Al? Oh, sorry, Carol and then Al.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
These people are kind of dreaming about this whole thing. You know, for me, I'm kind of like pulling out from
Okay,
this.
yep, zooming out. That's a good thing to do.
Pulling out and just seeing like the big forces of good, evil, corruption, innocence. I was thinking of that beautiful baby this morning.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the mother, what would it be like to be in labor and you've got somebody that waiting to devour your kid and all this. So that's all I'm thinking about is like the big picture stuff and like when everybody said confused, bewildered,
Yep.
awestruck. You know, I don't really understand this, kind of. And so what do? You say, God help me, right? Thank you
Mm-hmm.
that you understand, you know where you're going with all this. And I'm secure in you.
I love it. There's a very humbling aspect to reading all of this where it's like, I don't get all of this, but at no point do we get the feeling that God is beyond his match here, or that the outcome is even in question.
And we're in
Right?
his hands. We're in his hands.
We're totally
I
in
don't
his
have to
hands.
worry. I don't have to freak out
Yep.
about this creepy snake guy and then him trying to devour the baby and all
Yeah.
that stuff.
A dragon or serpent waiting to devour an infant as soon as it's born. That's about as terrifying an image as you could think of. And yet, it's not a terrifying passage, is it? like nobody said terror is the way that I feel here, because at no point do you think that evil, and it's being portrayed as fully evil. I mean, they're not pulling any punches here, but at no point are we thinking that evil is actually in the ascendancy, like that evil actually will win.
And not because of us,
Not because of us,
but because of what Christ did, what God did through Christ,
absolutely.
right?
So ends up being very Christological, even though it's kind of bizarre. And I love that when I called on you and surprised you, you're like, well, I'm just sort of dreaming about this whole thing. That's the right thing to do. I love that as a description. What does it mean to reflect on Revelation? Well, it is itself a vision. Now, vision versus dream, I don't want to get into that too much, but I love that. I'm dreaming about this a little bit. I'm just kind of letting my mind wander over all of this text. I think that's what it's supposed to do. Yeah.
I know this is off topic, but I want to ask, when on number 12:4,
Yep.
his tail swept down a third of the stars of heaven cast down to earth. Why are there stars in heaven if it's constant and light out?
Yeah, why are there stars in heaven if it's constantly light, and the tail swiping down the third of the stars, so they're cast down to earth? What's going on here? And we've had an instance where a portion of the stars have been pulled out of the sky previously, amidst all of the signs that we saw earlier. Does this mean a third of the stars in heaven? Is that a symbolic way of talking about a third of the angels in heaven? That seems to be a fairly accepted possible interpretation of that symbol. What I like about a third is it's a half of what remains. And if I lost you in the fractions there, when you divide something into 1/3 and 2/3, the amount that disappears is 1/2 of what remains. So I love this idea that there's a sizable amount, but it's literally doubled by the number of stars that do remain in heaven. So whether this is referring to physical destruction, like so much of the earlier portion of the book seems to have been about, and physical destruction understood from the earthly standpoint, or whether this is talking about the casting down of heavens, of angels from the heavens, twice the number that are cast down are still sticking around. And I kind of like that idea too. I think it's part of why we don't walk, even though there's some terrifying imagery here, we don't walk away terrified. Because we recognize this is awful, but it's still completely outweighed by the good and the power of the good. And we don't get the idea that this is even costing God really any major effort for all of this to take place, which I just love. It's evil portrayed as evil, and good portrayed as so much better, even in its power, its might over evil. All right, let's take a look. These are all, I love this, all wonderful reflections. Let me point us to a few things here, round some things out biblically. Honestly, we've drawn out as much as I feel like we must draw out before we move out away from Revelation 12. And if we were really trying to hurry, it's all right, on we go to 13 and 14. But let's take a little bit more on some of the biblical background. First, let me read from the authors here of the study. It's the fourth paragraph of the introduction. In the first part of Revelation, John pictures the outward struggle between the church and the world. Now in these next chapters, the underlying cause of this hostility is revealed. It's the age-old conflict between God and Satan, which accounts for the persecution of the church. Through his life, suffering, death, and resurrection, Christ won the crucial battle on behalf of all his people. But the devil still does not give up. He continues to struggle to enslave and destroy all of God's creatures and his creation. All history, from the victorious work of Christ on earth to the last day, is the violent death struggle between the church and Satan, with God and Christ behind the church. And I would have added, with the outcome already certain. The outcome is already promised, that the devil has been defeated. This is that struggle playing out, though. And then it says, the actors playing the major roles in this cosmic struggle are introduced in Revelation 12 through 14. Then in chapters 15 through 20, John depicts God's coming in judgment to destroy his enemies once and for all. Finally, in chapters 21 to 22, he describes the eternal future that awaits all the faithful people of God. So this ties into the idea that really 1 through 11 could be thought of as being almost a self-contained book, and then 12 through 21 could also, or 22, could be thought as its own. I don't like that 100% because the sevens, we've done 2 of the 3 sets of 7. We got another set of 7 still coming, so they're tied so tightly together. Because remember, we had the 7 seals being broken, and then the 7 trumpets sounding. Now we have a pause, and then the 7 bowls or the 7 censers. There's different ways to translate it. We still haven't gotten, like it's been all this lead up, and it hasn't actually happened. And then I think we're pausing, we're zooming back out, Carol, to say, and that's one of the things I think is great to do when you read Revelation. Zoom it way out. Don't get Don't get lost in the details. Let the details evoke the mood, let them evoke the experience. Don't get lost in them. The more you try to drill down on them, it's like looking at an impressionist painting. If you just look at one brush stroke, you're gonna lose what the picture's all about. But if you don't have the brush strokes, you don't have a picture. And so I kind of like that. Don't get so zoomed in that you ever lose what's being portrayed here. And I feel like a lot of times that's the danger. So, all right, so let's take a look at a couple of things here. So Revelation 12, 1 through 6. Let me just reread it so it's all fresh. A great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. She was pregnant and was crying out in birth pains and the agony of giving birth. And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his heads 7 diadems. His tail swept down a third of the stars from heaven and cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth, so that when she bore her child, he might devour it. She gave birth to a male child, one who is to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. But her child was caught up to God and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by God, in which she is to be nourished for 1,260 days. Okay, let's take a look at a couple of things. Now, one, that the woman is described as a sign, and the dragon is described as a sign. What do you think we should take from that language? I saw a sign in heaven. I saw another sign in heaven. That they're signs. Yep, absolutely. What's that mean? If they're signs. What's that?
It's not literal.
It's not literal, right? The sign is not the restaurant, right? Don't walk up to the sign to order your steak or whatever. The sign points you to the restaurant. These are things that are supposed to point to some other reality. So the idea that we're visibly going to see a woman with, the sun and the moon and the dragon with the heads and the stuff. No, we're told this is a sign. This is to point us to some other reality. And I like that. What signs, by the way, and we've read these both previously. Did Jesus, this is question 132. What signs did Jesus tell us would precede the last day? This is actually one of our readings. I think it was the second to last Sunday of the church year. So about a month ago, we read Luke 21. Anybody remember what are some of the things that it said would happen? Earthquakes. What's that? Yeah, earthquakes. Terrors, wars, and rumors of wars. Yeah, there's going to be plagues. There's going to be pestilence. All of this sort of thing. Blood, fire, all that stuff. Yep. But Jesus says these will be signs to you. They're not just happenings. A sign points to something else. These will be signs for you. And remember, if you remember, all the way back in the first session, we talked about the volcano eruption that buried Pompeii had happened in between when Jesus had spoken those words and probably when John had recorded this vision on Patmos. There had been an overthrow. Tremendous persecutions had broken out within the Roman world, for instance. So a lot of things have been seen that sound a lot like what Jesus had predicted. Sound a lot like what John is picking up now. 133 here. Although the child represents the Messiah, now here's him drawing a one-to-one relationship. I get a little uneasy about that. But he says, the woman who bears the child does not stand for Mary. Rather, before giving birth to the child, the woman symbolizes the people of Israel, God's Old Testament church. After the child is born, the woman symbolizes New Testament believers. He says explain. I say explore, and feel free to critique. I don't think this is bad. I just don't love the one-to-one ratio here. But what are some of the things that would lead you to believe that this woman could symbolize not just Mary, I don't think it ever stops being Mary, but could symbolize all of the Old Testament believers, all the people of Israel? What's a detail that would play into that? Jordan?
Yeah, I just think you can't understand this without thinking about Genesis, right? The very beginning of the conflict between God and Satan, or humanity and Satan as we're introduced to it in Scripture, is Satan tempting the woman, giving into temptation, and then God gives the Genesis 3:15, the first gospel as they call it,
Yep.
where he says that there's going to be this enmity between the woman and Satan, and that the seed of the woman is going to crush the head of the serpent.
Yep.
So it's very obvious that that's what he's drawing on here.
Yep.
And it also seems pretty obvious that it has to. I feel like when people say it doesn't refer to Mary, they're just trying to fend off Roman
Avoid
Catholic
Mary.
arguments that
Yep.
try to make all sorts of. Because Roman Catholics have often tried to argue that, well, she has a crown, therefore Mary's the Queen of Heaven. They kind of extrapolate all these different things. But
Yep.
I don't think we have to throw Mary out altogether, because she is the one that gave birth. So she's in some way representative here of the promise that God gave to Eve, the first woman, And then Mary represents the whole people of God in some way, but represents the fulfillment of the promise through her seed.
Yep. Yep. So we've got Eve and Mary both here because there's been 2 times that there was just one woman in the biblical picture, right? One was when there was only one woman, and that's Eve, who's the mother of all life. And then the other is when it's Mary, the only one who's ever given birth to God in the flesh. I think that this can be symbolizing both, or pointing us to both of them. What are some details that might make us think particularly Old Testament imagery? Al?
I think it's, I could be wrong, but the Israelites and all the plagues they went through, all
Mhm.
the exiles,
Yep.
all the death they suffered from the snakes. Like, that's a lot of pain to suffer. I
Yep.
think giving birth. I
Yep.
think-
So the pain of giving birth, you can definitely align that with all the plagues. Now, those were inflicted on Egypt or any unfaithful Israelites, but the wilderness, the being beset by the snakes, all that sort of thing, yeah, that all of these birth pangs, yep, I think that that's perfectly good parallel. Rachel?
And she has a crown of 12 stars.
Crown of
It would be the
12 stars.
12 tribes of Israel.
12
So
tribes of
maybe we could
Israel.
do that.
Yep, so if it's a
Maybe
crown of,
you could think of it.
yep, so I agree.
just don't see
No, go ahead.
I just don't see the New Testament outside of giving birth to a male child.
Well, yeah, so then, well, let's do that then. I'm gonna come back to the Old Testament, but why would he be saying that after the child is born, the woman symbolizes the New Testament believers? Why would he say that?
Because
Al?
the New Testament starts when Jesus is born.
New Testament starts when Jesus is born, so that's when we would be thinking, all right, Christ has arrived, so maybe New Testament. What else might maybe align with New Testament imagery there? Lisa?
I mean, then she flees into the wilderness.
Yep, the fleeing
Yeah.
out into the wilderness, which obviously, very prominent wilderness experience was the Israelites after their slavery in Egypt, but also is drawn, there are biblical parallels drawn multiple different places to that, describing our reality now as well, that being our church age reality. Yeah, Lynn, then Carol.
Well, it says that the dragon pursues the rest of her children.
What's that?
It says the dragon pursues the rest of her children.
The dragon pursues the rest of her children. So that's, Christ is not the only one of this generation. We are all Christ's brothers and Christ's sisters. So we are all then the children of this woman. This, I think, is part of why I don't want to say it's just Mary, as some Catholic interpreters do, and say Mary is clearly the Queen of Heaven and this is just about Mary. No, it's not just about Mary. I think Mary, absolutely, you can't interpret this without Mary either. I think that would be a mistake. But then it turns to being the church, and the church is how the rest of us are born. Like happened to Luca today. He's just been reborn as one of Christ's brothers. That didn't happen because Mary showed up. That happened because it's through the gifts that Christ has given to the church. And so I think that all of these images, they're just getting layered. I've used the image before, and sorry, people of Elijah's era, you're not going to get this, but you remember transparencies and those transparency projectors? Yep, so this is that idea where you have a transparency, and you can stack them on top of each other. And those can all then be used to give a very detailed picture. And any one of them, if you're only looking, and notice how I immediately do this, because that's what you had to do with the transparencies. This is the only way you can figure out, hold them up to a light, right? If you're holding just one, you're not getting the full picture, right? And so that's why I think use this idea that we're stacking images up, and you don't need to pick just one, because just one is not going to give you the full picture. They're all part of what's being pictured here. And the fact that they're all stirred together here, it feels like, wait a minute. So we're talking about Eve and the people of Israel and Mary and the New Testament church all in the same image, like all at the same time.
Yes.
Yeah, because God exists outside of time. That's not an issue for him. I told you, this is the Christmas story as you've never seen it before. This is the Christmas story told from the cosmic perspective, and time details kind of go out the window because God can see all of human history at a glance. We can't. So it gets a little confusing for us, but we can catch glimpses of it. We can dream about it. And as we dream about it, some of this stuff, it's like, oh, I think I get it a little bit. And if I do, that's really cool. What a great story to be a part of. Because it's not just a story, it's actually history. All right, Margaret, and then Kristen. Right? Yeah, well, it's a puzzle, but it's one that we're a part of. Yeah, absolutely. Christy.
So the language is striking to me, obviously, in the Christmas narrative about this shall be a sign unto you.
Yep.
Today, and so they find the baby child, the child in swaddling clothes, and just how this is a sign as well, and both are at this crucial kind of switch in history. This is
Yep.
when everything changes, so this is a sign, and so it's very similar for Jesus. This was a sign, and then that's fulfilling the old, the new is now coming, so it's kind of all right at this crucial moment.
Yep, so this shall be a sign unto you is the language that the angel uses at Jesus' birth. We have the sign language again here, that it's at this crucial moment, at this turning of the tide. We sang it in 2 different stanzas for the hymn of the day today. When half spent was the night. I love that phrase, the idea that everything's going to start getting lighter from this point forward. And so at the crucial moment, as it says in Galatians, when the fullness of time had come, then God sent Christ to be born of a virgin, etc. Charlotte, did you have a hand up? There's a hand somewhere over here, right? Charlotte, yep.
I was looking at, she gave birth to a male child, okay, one who's to rule all the nations.
Yep.
And then I was looking at the next part with a rod of iron. And to me, that would be the Old Testament.
Yep. Well, and this ruling with a rod of iron is a specific Old Testament prophecy, and I don't remember if he references it, and I didn't write it down. I remember thinking, I'm like, rod of iron, I gotta make sure to point us toward that, but that'll be an easy Google search. If someone wants to do it on the fly right now, you can, but this ruling with a rod of iron, ruling the nations with a rod of iron, this isn't the first time this phrase shows up. But could it be symbolizing, Kip, pick up from there?
Well, I'm looking then to the New Testament.
Yep,
I mean, the path is very narrow
yep.
and leading to.
Yeah, narrow is the path and difficult,
Yes.
yep.
And although we believe our Heavenly Father is loving and forgiving and kind, but there are certain, we know we have to confess our sins, we have to try to be better people. So while it is not a rod of iron, there is still the straight and narrow we have to follow.
Yeah. Well, and I think what you're drawing out here is a law-gospel dynamic. He rules with a rod of iron. The rod of iron doesn't, you get hit on the head with the rod of iron. It's not going to be the cartoon where the rod bends, right? Which is going to give, you or the rod? The rod is not going to give. And this is an apt image for God's law. I mean, when we crash against God's law, it's we who break, not his law. So I think there's a good law-gospel dynamic here, but recognizing when he rules with that rod of iron, he's the one who takes the punishment on himself rather than us. I also notice it's the quickest telling of the life of Jesus is just he's born, then he's taken up into heaven. That's the whole deal. Right away, because we're looking at all of the other activity. This is not a deep dive into what was happening during Jesus' life. This is the before and the after of Jesus being born. Yeah, then.
Psalm 2, verse 9.
Psalm 2, verse 9. All right, thank you. I knew it was somewhere. So, excellent. Oh yeah, and there it is. It's tucked into question number 135. It has Psalm 2:9, which and actually Galatians 4:4-5 is the passage about when the fullness of time had arrived, etc. All right, so you can look up. So if you want to take the sheet home, because I want to be respectful of people's time. Question number 135 is a great one to go look up a couple of these other passages to see some of the biblical underpinnings. There's another, you can see the way it's laid out. Question 137 onto the next page there. It's going to give you a bunch of places that you can look at some of the other passages about the rebellion in heaven and about its consequences. And the nice thing is, they're not all, in fact, most of them aren't at all, tucked in some sort of apocalyptic vision. They're actually direct teaching about the war in heaven. So there's something we can lean on much more heavily than the imagery of a vision. But they're what would be called dispositive teaching. They're actually saying, here's how it is. And so that can be a homework assignment for you as well. Similarly with the references about the desert being a place of refuge, see that at the bottom of the page. Those are all things you can look up. And if you want, I've done some of the homework for you because I wasn't sure how long we'd have. I've got page numbers for all of those in these, although if you're using your phone or a website, it's pretty easy to just type them in and it pops right up, which can be handy as well. But I do want to jump forward a little bit. So we've taken a good look at 12:1-6. Let me read the rest of it for us, and let's hit just a couple of things before we head out. Now war arose in heaven, Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon. Now the authors of the study make a good point here. Why is it Michael rather than Christ who's expelling the angels in heaven? Where's Christ at this point? He's on earth. Yeah, he's being born on earth. Now, I'm not sure if that's 100% where we're supposed to go with this, but I do find it interesting. The other thing that I find interesting, which is unavoidable, does it take God to defeat Satan? No, it doesn't. Even the angels can defeat Satan. The good angels outnumber them at a 2-to-1 ratio. That's why I brought that up before, that whole 1/3 business. And the good angels are enough to defeat the evil angels. God doesn't even have to be at the battle. God doesn't even have to be involved, which I love. Now, are they trying to draw more specifically the point that Michael leads this battle because Christ is right now incarnate on earth? Perhaps that could lead to some tricky theology about Christ's omnipresence, but we know he sets that aside. So I'm gonna leave that aside for right now and just go with what's very clear, which is that all it takes is Michael and the archangels. Doesn't even take God himself. We had the best army or the greatest power, and it can all stay in reserve because the Michael and the angels are enough to overcome Satan and the demons.
Excuse me,
Yep.
but doesn't God have to direct Michael to do it?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So Michael is a servant of God in the same way that Satan was supposed to have been.
So it's like, they really can't do anything without his say-so.
Right.
Any,
Correct. If they did anything without his say-so, they would have been on the other side. That's the way you join the other team, is by doing something that God has not commanded with the angels. So there we go. So Michael and the angels fighting against the dragon. The dragon and the angels fought back. He was defeated. There's no longer any place for them in heaven. And the great dragon was thrown down, the ancient serpent, who's called the devil, and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. Satan means accuser. Satan is actually a specific term in Hebrew legal contexts. Satan is, now don't take this too far, please, but Satan plays the role that we would call a district attorney. Now, I'm not saying district attorneys are Satan. Be very clear on that. All right? But the one whose job it is to bring the accusation, that's the Satan. That's the term. So we think of Satan as being like another name. It's actually not a name. It's actually a role. It's the one who is supposed to accuse another of a crime. That's what Satan's job is. Satan is the accuser. But here it points out that the accuser is also the deceiver. So the great dragon, the serpent, the devil, Satan, the deceiver. We're just stacking up the imagery here. Those overlays are all here. Thrown down to the earth, angels thrown down with him. I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, "Now the salvation and power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ have come. For the accuser of our brothers has been thrown down, who accuses," so notice all this accusation language, that's all the Satan role, that's why I wanted to draw it out. He accuses them night and day before our God. They've conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony, for they loved not their lives, even unto death. Ties perfectly with the martyrs of today and St. Stephen's Day a couple of days before. It's the word of God and the word of the testimony. The blood of the Lamb, and the word of the testimony. And therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. But woe to you, O earth and sea, for the devil has come down to you in great wrath, because he knows that his time is short. Now that's understood by these authors, and I think most authors, to apply to right now. That's Satan and the devil and the demons have some amount of ability to act right now. God has allowed them that much leeway here on earth. We see a glimpse of it in the beginning and end of the book of Job, for instance. But notice that it says his time is what? His time is short, not forever. Alex.
Why does Satan continue to fight even if he knows he's not going to win?
Why does Satan continue to fight even if he knows he's not going to win? Well, for starters, does he know that?
Because he keeps failing.
He does keep
You
failing,
would think
yeah.
he would learn a lesson.
You would think he would learn a lesson. Now, to all of us, not singling anybody out, any of you have a sinful nature that lives within you that keeps doing what it's not supposed to do, even though it knows that it can't win? All right, so even if we can't fully understand it, we can relate to it, even though Paul himself said, I don't understand what I do. The things I'm supposed to do, I don't do. The things I'm not supposed to do, those are the things I keep on doing. We wrestle with this ourselves. So does Satan know that he's defeated? I don't know. He's giving up his only source of omniscience when he gives up his connection with God. Satan doesn't know everything. And this is one of the things that I think people can overplay, especially if you get into some of the, supernatural forms of entertainment, like movies about demon possession or whatever. Satan is not all-knowing. Only God is all-knowing. Satan cannot be everywhere. Only God can be everywhere. His powers are great. We should not underestimate him, but neither should we overestimate him and treat him as though he and God are just the dark and light side of equally omniscient, omnipotent beings. Not the case. God's the only one who's omniscient and omnipotent. Satan is very much not. Elijah.
This isn't necessarily the most helpful answer, but I've always enjoyed the sort of speculation about this in Paradise Lost, where Satan falls from heaven and he's sort of contemplating. He's like, oh, all right, now I know I can't win. So basically his whole plan is just to annoy God as much as possible until he knows he's going to lose anyway.
Yep.
But he thinks he can at least corrupt humanity enough that they will come over to his side before he finally loses.
So in John Milton's Paradise Lost, Satan does know that he has lost, but he decides to just create as much suffering and hardship as he can on the way out. This is the person getting thrown out of the game and then overturning the table and throwing the this and throwing that, right? I'm just going to cause as much chaos as I can on the way out. But if we stick with that, what was Satan's motivation in Paradise Lost? We turn this to a literary class for just a second. It's my favorite quote. I mean, obviously it's horrible, but it's Satan. My favorite quote from Satan: "Better to
rule in hell than serve in heaven."
Better to rule in hell than to serve in heaven. Is it not the case with our sinful nature that so often we would rather have control of something awful than be subservient to something good? Is that not something that we all have to fight with? And that's what Satan is continuing to do. So Satan, as described by John Milton, now if we're not 100% sure how to interpret Revelation, we certainly have gone further from that when we're trying to interpret John Milton. But at least the insight there, the thought process is he'd rather have control over whatever, even if it's something awful, than not have control. And we can relate to that, at least, within our sinful selves. All right, so continuing on here, he's thrown down to the earth, and then the loud voice and the rejoicing. But woe to you, O earth and sea, the devil has come down to you in great wrath. He knows that his time is short. So the devil's here, he's wrathful, he can do harm, and his time is short, and he's subservient to God, and even to God's angels. He is not the most powerful being that we will encounter. The most powerful one is the one we encountered already today, and are continuing to encounter through his word. All right, a little bit more. Verse 13, when the dragon saw that he'd been thrown down to the earth, he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. But the woman was given the 2 wings of the great eagle, so she might fly from the serpent into the wilderness to the place where she's to be nourished for a time and times and half a time. So this seems to be just an imagery overlap of what happened before. Talked about she goes out to the wilderness. It seems to be referencing that again. This time she goes out with the wings of the eagle. There are those who try to interpret what are the 2 wings of the eagle. Is that what John is wanting or what God is wanting? I'm not certain. And then, this is interesting, the serpent poured water like a river out of his mouth after the woman to sweep her away with a flood. But the earth came to the help of the woman. The earth opened its mouth and swallowed the river that the dragon had poured from his mouth. Then he became furious with the woman, went off to make war on the rest of her offspring, on those who keep the commandments of God and hold to the testimony of Jesus. And he stood on the sand of the sea, although this is tricky because some of the manuscript history is a little bit tricky on that verse, and it could be I stood on the sand of the sea, or it could be he stood on the sand of the sea, based on some of the variants that exist in some of the manuscripts. Fortunately, it doesn't seem to be a particularly main point there. What does this, all right, don't try to make this work on a timeline yet. When you first hear about this, what does this make you think of first? The whole earth being flooded, and then the earth needing to swallow up those waters. What do you think of first? Yeah, why is it hard to call that out right away? Because we're thinking this is after Jesus is born, right? Remember, this is a heavenly perspective. We don't have to worry a ton about the way the timeline lines up. So, whether this is a reference back to Noah's great flood specifically, or is talking about the way that the flood waters threaten everything and is fully symbolic, I don't think we need to drill all the way down to bedrock on that one and figure out what it's supposed to be. I think it's both. That's why I love, and it works out so perfect that we had a baptism today, that baptismal prayer that makes reference to 3 different settings where God used water to punish the wicked, but to be the means of rescue of the faithful. So it was Noah and 8 souls in all, and then it was the Red Sea, and then it was Jesus in the baptism in the Jordan River, right? I love this idea, and it does exist throughout Scripture, the idea of waters being used both as punishment and as rescue. And we could come up with other ones too, like Jonah and the whale would be a very prominent one that you could do. If the parting of the Red Sea is one, then the parting of the Jordan River when they enter the Promised Land would also have to be one. We can come up with others as well. And then standing on the sand of the sea, what does that mean? I think it's interesting because how much of the earth was covered? All of it. And whereas by the end of Satan's great, I mean, it's got to be a pretty significant effort for Satan, right, to flood the entire earth. Where are we standing by the time it's done? On the shore. What isn't there if the whole earth is sea? There's no shore, right? So it's just, I think it's wonderful. It's sort of a little bit of trash talking almost, a little bit of triumphing over the fact you tried to flood the whole earth, then what am I standing on? I'm standing on solid ground here, or at least on the sand at the edge of the sea. I pick up at least some of that. I don't know if that's what's intended here. And the dragon, so as this comes to an end here, the dragon is heading off to make war on all of the woman's other offspring, but the woman herself is promised that she's secure and safe. This certainly would seem to line up with the idea of the gates of hell cannot prevail against the church, so the church will continue to exist, even if individual members of the church are under persecution and under attack, and perhaps even getting picked off, that sort of thing. Any other thoughts here with this ending here of the woman, the dragon, Satan thrown down to earth, the one who's born? Any other things we want to make sure that we point out?
Is there anything in here of a kind of a look back into the preserving of the mind in the Old Testament so that Christ would be born? You know, the stories in the Old Testament that
Yeah.
preserve the line.
Yeah, the preserving the lineage that was born.
But it's kind of floating around in the background there. You know, that-
Well, certainly, you know, if the woman never showed up, and that's where I think the imagery of her having the 12 stars on the crown, not 24. 24 has already been used to mean Old and New Testament. So I do think she's the fulfillment of the people of Israel. So all the way back to Eve, being now fulfilled in Mary. And so now it's her offspring that will crush the serpent's head, picking up that same language as well, right? That same imagery, the serpent in the garden. Now we have the serpent wishing to devour him, etc. Yeah, Margaret?
Well, this is just, I don't know, just looking at it, this is, but the two women, but the women was given the two wings. The
Yeah.
two wings is like, what is two wings?
That's where people have said, you know, could this be law and gospel, or could this be, you know, Old Testament truth and New Testament truth? I don't know, or is it just a way to escape? You know, if you grow wings, you know, how many times have we wished we could fly? But particularly if you're completely surrounded, up and out might be the only way. So is it trying to point us toward a specific answer or not? I don't know entirely. I do find it interesting. Verse 17. The dragon became furious with the woman and went off to make war on the rest of her offspring, on those who keep the commandments of God and hold to the testimony of Jesus. Is that intentionally? I mean, if you heard those who keep the commandments of God, who would you normally be thinking of there? You'd be thinking of Israel, of the covenant that was given through the commandments. So you'd be thinking much more Old Testament. When you think of those who hold to the testimony of Jesus, who are you thinking of? Well, that's clearly the church. That's clearly the New Testament. Is it the intention, or am I reading too much into this to think that this is the people of both the Old Covenant and the New Covenant? Remember when Paul tried to wrestle in Romans with how do we as Christians understand the long-term role of Israel now? And Paul ends with saying, what a mystery this is. Who can fathom the depths of God? I'm not 100%. Paul wasn't 100% sure. I'm definitely not 100% sure. To me, that language sure sounds like the pursuit of the Old Testament and the New Testament. But again, the timeline, this is from a heavenly perspective. Has Satan always pursued God's people? Yes. Did he pursue God's people when they were under the old covenant that had been given through Moses and the commandments? Yes. Does he pursue God's people now that we're under the new covenant that has been fulfilled by Jesus' blood? Yes. So is this trying to portray all of that at a glimpse? Is this portraying some future reuniting that God alone can bring about? I don't know. It just kind of hints at it. But the imagery certainly seems to be pointing toward the unity of God's working through his people throughout all of history, Old and New Testament, pre-Christ, post-Christ, and Satan's pursuit of all of them. In an interesting way that's more perhaps a tease than something where we can say it must mean this. All right, Rachel.
So I was thinking after reading all this, since Satan knows he can't win against God, but how do you hurt someone by going after those he loves?
Hurt the ones they love.
So he's going to continue to go after us.
Yep.
Because that's going to hurt God ultimately.
Yep.
So
I think that's a good insight, and kind of to Alex's point earlier. Yep, I think how do you hurt, if you can't actually hurt someone, and you're a particularly evil person, then what do? You go on to try to hurt the things that they care about and the ones that they care about. So Satan knows that he can't get God, he can't get heaven, he can't get the woman. I mean, the things he's trying to attack, the things that he can't reach is becoming a long list. So instead he'll go after her offspring. But he can't get the son that was born either, can't get him. So can't get God, can't get heaven or the angels, can't get the woman, can't get the woman's son, so I'll go after the other offspring. But even that, the time is short. Time times and half of time, 1,260 days, 3.5 years. It's a limited period of time where Satan has whatever authority he still has, and that authority is growing short. Alex?
Is that 3.5 years of heaven's time or our time?
Yes, absolutely. Or perhaps neither. Is it 3.5 years of heaven's time or our time? Yes, or perhaps no. Yeah. But it certainly can't be walked away seeming like it's forever.
Yeah.
It's a limited period of time, and even among limited periods of time, it's a limited period of time. So, all right, very good. So, next week, it'll be Pastor Cooper leading us. So do you want to prime us with any thoughts on this? Any final words? Are you ready to?
No, I think.
You'll correct all my errors when you're here next.
Yeah.
Excellent. Perfect. All right, let's close with a word of prayer and thank God that He knows all of this and He most clearly is in control. The Lord be with you. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your goodness to us. You have created us, you have redeemed us, you have called us and enlightened us by your Spirit. And then you've given us even this additional gift, as hard as it is to know how to receive, this additional gift of a vision of how these things can be understood from a heavenly perspective. It forces us very quickly to humility that we can't fully grasp and we can't fully know. But thank you for that which still shows clearly, if we do zoom out, that you are in full control, that all the evil that we face, as evil as it is, requires almost no effort from you to overcome. That this is all part of your plan, and your plan is a glorious one. And so when we face the evils of this world and the persecutions that come with it, and the reminder today with the slaughter of the innocents is a very apt one, we thank you for the promise that even death is not a threat to us, and that our return, our rebirth in you is a promise. So thank you for that, and may we live in that truth in this coming week and into the brand new year. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, thanks everybody, especially the kiddos who came out were so quiet and calm. Nicely done.